Right, welcome back everybody. Today is going to be a very, very interesting day. The Western Cape High Court is expected to deliver a judgment on whether independent candidates should be allowed to stand to be elected for provincial government and national parliament. The New Nation movement, which is calling for individuals to be able to contest in the elections, says that if their case is successful, they will apply for the date to be postponed and declare the Electoral Act unconstitutional. Now, while the outcome of the case could have huge implications for elections in the future, the Election Monitoring Network says it would not pose a constitutional crisis for the country and is unlikely to delay the upcoming elections. You know that the elections are on the 8th of May, just a couple of days away. Nkosikhulule, Nyembezi, a policy analyst and co-chairperson of the Election Monitoring Network, joins us this morning from here, our Cape Town studios, and it happens to be his birthday as well. So we've got to wish him a happy birthday. So nice to have you here celebrating with us on Morning Live. Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, thank you.
We wish you all the best, the very, very best. Okay, so let's talk to what we can expect to hear. So today, if the court rules in favor of the applicants, is this ideal for the country and democracy?
Yes, it will be quite a positive thing if we can get a judgment in favor of the application. However, we do know that elections are a regulated sphere. I mean, the fact that it is over 20 years now and we still do not have a space open for independent candidates to contest elections at provincial and national level, it means that our democracy is on a yellow, because we know that the right to stand for public office is given to individual citizens. Political parties are only a vehicle to take us there, and hence we need to open up space for independent candidates to contest at provincial and national level.
Talk to us about the origins of this case, because it's quite an interesting case if people are not too sure about it, the New Nation movement and what they're actually calling for. So let's just get to the bottom of this and then we'll talk more in detail about it.
In South Africa, they say history repeats itself, because back in 2012 we had Votani Majola in Gauteng High Court bringing the same set of facts, challenging the president at the time to delay elections so as to open up space, but the court did not rule in his favor because it believed that the current electoral system is intact and it is up for politicians to change it, so the court cannot force it upon politicians. So it does look like what this court case can do this time around here in the Western Cape is to activate the space for parliament, public representatives, to discuss on this issue, because what is at play here is the constitutional right to stand for public office, which is given to citizens, as I've said, and constitutional values of multi-party democracy, proportional representation, and of course, in terms of the values that the societies choose to follow, the court cannot dictate or prescribe as to which way we need to go. So I think the least that we can, or the most that we can expect out of today's court judgment is to say Parliament must prioritize this issue, have a discussion, and see if we can work out any electoral system that provides space for independent candidates going forward. And as I say, that is unlikely to have an impact by way of delaying the elections on the 8th of May.
Yeah, okay, so that's something that we can rule out, because I know a lot of people have been concerned that this could delay the elections, but you yourself saying it possibly won't. What do you believe makes this particular case different to the one in 2012? Why do you think they have more that could go in their favor?
It does point to the fact that political parties are selfish, because they were supposed to raise this issue in Parliament to say, let us rework the electoral system in order to open space for independent candidates, because we understand the value of independent candidates in a political system. They bring about issues in the debate that political parties tend to overlook. They can play an important role in parliament because there are, for example, portfolio committees like SCOPA that are meant to be chaired by another party other than the majority party, maybe the speaker or the deputy speaker. So there is a role for independent candidates so as to widen the choice for the voters to then say you can vote for the person directly, especially because we know that in terms of the freedom of expression, we can think about this as a triangle to say there is a speaker who is an independent candidate, has a manifesto and has issues to raise, and there's an audience, which is a voter who may associate themselves with the independent candidate, and then there is a bystander. This issue of free and fair elections is a right that all South Africans are entitled to. Whether you are under 18, you are not voting, but we all are entitled to free and fair elections. So let us open up the space. It is comforting to know that whether you want to vote for an independent candidate or not, whether you want to be an independent candidate or not, it is comforting to know that on the ballot paper you have independent candidates, and therefore the choice is wide for every South African to make.
We need to go back a little bit because it's quite important to note what was said in June last year. And I'll read what was said. The application, this was by Chief Justice Mogoeng. This was in the Constitutional Court. He was saying that there was no reason why any citizen could not stand as an independent candidate to be elected to municipal councils, provincial legislatures, or the National Assembly. He says the enjoyment of this right has not been prescribed by the Constitution. It is just not facilitated by legislation. That's what Mogoeng said. So, in effect, I mean, the Constitutional Court almost saying there shouldn't be a problem with this.
Exactly, because the Constitution in broad strokes provide for this right to stand for public office. It provides for this value of proportional representation and multi-party democracy. And then it gives Parliament a mandate to create enabling legislation and institutions to facilitate the enjoyment of this right. We have an electoral court that looks into these issues. We've got an electoral commission that administers elections, and a whole lot of and a proportional representation system in the form of the electoral system. Now the thing is this: when we have a choice of 5 variations of proportional representation, when you choose go for option 1 instead of option 3, you cannot be blamed, and that falls in the realm of a political debate and a political ambit in terms of politicians in Parliament are supposed to adopt that law. So the point is, as South Africans, we need to activate that space to speak to public representatives in Parliament to say, let us put this issue on the table and couch our electoral system in a manner that accommodates independent candidates. We know we come from a history where in 1994, political parties and political leaders were banned, in prison, in exile. So in 1994, or in the early years of our democracy, we couldn't have a system that allows for independent candidates because the voters wouldn't necessarily be able to associate the face of a leader in order to be able to vote for. And also we didn't want to have in elections a national referendum that shows which tribe in South Africa is most dominant or popular. So it was convenient to have political parties as a vehicle and the only way to get to national and provincial parliaments. But now, after 20 years of democracy, we must reimagine the space and enrich our democracy by providing those ingredients that allow for participation of independent candidates.
Do you know, when you look at our system, multi-party democracy, proportional representation, these are value adders to democracy. But what this party, and they keep on saying, what they are fighting for is the primary right of every individual, accountability of an individual. I mean, if it doesn't pose a constitutional crisis for the country, why do you believe that this is a problem? And my second question to you, just if you can answer it at the same time, if these individuals do get voted into power, but they're not aligned to a party, how much influence can they actually hold?
The problem is that we have delayed in attending to this issue in the context of a maturing democracy. 20 years plus after democracy, we were supposed to broaden the space. We're supposed to make the circle bigger.
Yeah.
And so by not doing that, And as I say, even in 2012, with the case of Votani Majola, we were supposed to take up this issue. By not doing that, we are suffocating the space. So we need to be doing something. Hence, the courts are being used now to activate the space. How useful is it for our democracy to have independent candidates? We know about integrity, political integrity. This time around, citizens in South Africa are questioning the names of people that are put on the list by political parties, to then say political parties cannot have an exclusive right as to who do they put on their list, and they must not put people with questionable integrity. So if you can open up space for independent candidates that people can associate with, then we can have more people registering to vote, more people voting, in the sense that the election comes also with an emotional connection that motivates a voter to go and queue and make that X. So if you feel like what is available on the menu are people who are corrupt, are people who have no integrity, are people who you do not trust to convert their promises into reality to make the lives of the people better, some people may end up not voting. And yet there could be those individuals who are not constrained by the decisions at the national head office of a political party that you can then trust to do what you want, because even those individuals, when they are voted into parliament, they know that their chances of going back is predicated in them fulfilling that. And we know that when the political parties don't listen to what people are doing, in the case of cross-border municipalities, Merafong, Matatiele, and others, people converted civil organizations, civic organizations, into political parties. Perhaps if there was space for independent candidates, those civic leaders could have gone to parliament as independent candidates.
Yeah, you know, you're making me think very much so, because I know that what it's the person who's actually doing this entire thing from the New Nation movement is Advocate Alan Nelson, and one of the things he says is that we have the single biggest problem facing our country is the lack of accountability, particularly from leadership. Now, it reminds me of what was actually just said this last weekend. Nkosikhulule, he said, the people they are sending to Parliament must remember that they're not there in their personal capacity, so they shouldn't vote according to their consciences. I mean, what value would independent candidates add in this space if the court grants this? I mean, do you think that finally we can actually see accountability overall from an individual?
Yes, of course. We can see accountability from individuals, because independent candidates will bring to the fore issues that political parties tend to shy away from. Just because it is politically convenient for them, there are things that political parties do not take into account. And also to the extent that Parliament, to which independent candidates are going to be elected to represent people, is meant to hold the executive accountable. So in the system of political party only becoming a vehicle to get to parliament, it's just that those who are in the executive are also the political principals of the members of parliament. So they have, parliamentarians are now deployed by political parties. So if you have an independent candidate who is not deployed by a political party, they are likely to make an impact in parliament by way of holding executive accountable, because those who will be in the executive are likely not to be the principals of the MPs. And of course, what we can then see, if we open a space for independent candidates, what we can then see as the process and democracy matures is perhaps somebody standing to become the president on the ticket of being an independent candidate. And if those people can amass sufficient number of votes, then you can also have presidents who are not linked to political parties, and therefore it becomes possible to hold them accountable without being constrained by a cushion and a wall that political parties usually bring about around their members. We know this thing about deployment, to say somebody does something wrong in this department, they are moved to this department, and because the party is cushioning them, we have nothing more that we can say as ordinary citizens. Hence, we believe that the presence of independent candidates can enrich our democracy.
Yeah, fascinating conversation. We'll wait to hear today what that judgment is. The Western Cape High Court expected to hand down that judgment on whether or not independent candidates can partake in the elections. Nkosikhulule, Nyembezi, political analyst and co-chairperson of the Election Monitoring Network. Happy birthday again, and thank you so very much for chatting to us here on the program.
Thank you for the birthday wishes.
7 o'clock, let's get your news.